Good morning, everyone. Today is September 17th, Wednesday, and I wanted to come on Facebook Live and talk about the events of the past week as well as the next couple of weeks that is happening in the world today. Of course, as many of you are aware, September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was killed during a meeting that he was doing, and there's been a lot of coverage. On that day when I heard about it, I was very upset, angry, sad, frustrated, and I thought about doing a video, but I didn't want to speak out of emotion and anger, so I held it in abeyance. And right now I am on a road trip per assignment from the Lord from East Tennessee from East Texas, Nacogdoches, Lufkin area, to East Tennessee and Western North Carolina. So today's September 17th. I'm today in East Tennessee, and on this past Sunday, I went to the Well Global Church in Maryville, Tennessee, with my Facebook friend, Carolyn Christine. And there, it was my first time at the church with Mike and Andrea Brewer. Amazing service. But I want to set the timing of this vision that the Lord gave me, because that's very important. We're living in a time in which there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. But more specifically, we are approaching what you could call the end of the year on the Jewish calendar, because the 10 days of all start with Rosh Hashanah at sundown on September 22nd. Then we have October 1st, Yom Kippur, and then that makes up the 10 days of all. And then on October 6th through the 13th, we have Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And so, interesting timing. So I went to the Well Global Fellowship with Mike and Andrea Brewer, and amazing service. But before the worship really began, there was some decrees, declarations, and some addressing of the times of the past week. And there was reference to the shot heard around the world regarding Charlie Kirk. And there was also reference to, unless a seed is planted in the ground and dies, the fruit shall not come forth. That's a reference to John 12:24. You can look that up. But as I was thinking about those things and what Mike, Andrea, and some other people were saying, the Lord seemed to remind me that the funeral for Charlie Kirk is September 21st, 2025. That's very interesting to me, because that's basically the last day of the Jewish calendar before Rosh Hashanah, which begins at sundown on the 22nd. And so that's interesting to me, especially in light of, unless a seed is planted in the ground, it shall not, and dies, it shall not bear fruit. So that's an interesting connection. I encourage you to seek the heart of the Spirit of God for greater depth of understanding regarding what I'm going to share today, and about that, about the shot heard around the world and the seed that is planted. But as I was preparing this, I looked up September 21st in history to find out, are there any significant events for September 21st, the date of Charlie Kirk's funeral. And I found out that George W. Bush, 10 days after 9/11, 10 days after September 11th, 2001, he declared a war on terror, a war on terrorism. That's kind of interesting timing, considering everything that's been going on in the world today. Also, the UN, the United Nations, recognizes September 21st as an International Day of Peace. That's kind of interesting. And another interesting thing about September 21st is it's the autumn equinox, where day and night are balanced, equal times throughout the day. So it's a day of balance. So as I thought about this, we entered into worship there at the Well Global Church. And as I often do, after a time of worship, I sought the Lord to see if He had anything to speak to me during this time of worship. And shortly thereafter, I went into a vision. So I'm going to go straight into this vision and refer to my notes. And I'm going to try and speak quickly so I'm not taking up a lot of your time. But so I entered into the vision, and in the vision I was mounted on a white stallion, the horse that Jesus had given me in earlier visions. I talked about that. And I was up on a high mountain, all by myself, looking up at the sky and seeing the earth before me. And as I was sitting in this vision, I was waiting to see what the Lord wanted for me. And I could hear in the distance all around the world the prayers and the intercession and the crying out to God from all the peoples around the world. It was like a distant murmur that I was hearing rising up from all over the world. And as I was listening to that, the Lord let me know what I was hearing. And then as I was listening to that, I suddenly recalled in the vision what had been said earlier about the shot heard around the world. You've probably heard that phrase referenced several times over the past week or so. And the instant that I thought of that, the prayers and intercessions and the cries of the people of the earth began to immediately escalate, to grow louder in frequency and volume. So what was a murmur started to grow and become louder. And as I recognized that the prayers and intercession and the cries of the saints, God's people, were rising up, I looked up higher and I saw the mountain of the Lord before me and above me. And I saw the Lord mounted on His white stallion, as well as the host of heaven along the rim of the mountain of the Lord, looking down upon the earth and hearing the prayers, intercession, and cries of the saints. And the sound, the frequencies of the prayers, intercession, cries of the saints grew louder and louder. And I noticed as they grew louder and louder, the host of heaven started to gather together in greater numbers. There was more and more of the faithful cloud of witnesses, the angels of heaven, the army of heaven. There was more and more gathered along the rim of the mountain. And interestingly, they just waited. The Lord was just waiting. And I recognized that they were waiting on the Lord as they were listening and processing the prayers, intercession, and cries of the saints. And as the prayers and intercession crying out to the saints grew louder and louder and louder and louder, it started to sound like a shofar, a watchman's cry shofar, like a watchman would be standing on the wall of the world, crying out the alarm and blowing his shofar to call for help, to call for reinforcements, to let the people know that there's something going on. And as the shofar of the prayers, intercession, and the cries of the saints sounded out, heaven began to respond. Now, the response I'm not going to get into, but you can read a little bit about that in my book, Kingdom Collisions. Heaven and Earth Collide. It's available on Amazon. But in that book, in the very last chapter, The Day of the Ways, I talk about the response from heaven. So that's kind of interesting. So my encouragement is to raise up your voices. The enemy, our adversary, tried to silence the voice of Charlie Kirk. Well, a lot of college kids, a lot of people were greatly impacted by Charlie Kirk's life. I encourage you to raise up your voices and show the adversary we will not be silenced. We will not go silently into the night. We will respond in faith, in believing, and crying out to heaven for help in our time of need. So I encourage you to not be silent. Raise up your voices. Let your voices be heard from the east to the west and all around the world. Encourage people to stop being silent. It is time for the reign, the R-E-I-G-N, of God's people to start dominating the darkness that is threatening to cover the world. Light forces darkness to flee. But if our voices are silent, if we just allow darkness to encroach upon our cities, our regions, our nations, if we do not raise up our voices and take a stand, just like Charlie Kirk did, then darkness will increase. But I believe light is greater than darkness. I believe the Spirit of God inside is greater than them out there. Greater is He that is in you, Christ in you, than any enemy, because I believe Jesus Christ defeated the adversary at the cross. Flood the streets with the love of God. Flood the streets with the light of heaven. Let His love reign upon the earth. We don't respond in violence and acts of aggression and disruption and hatred. We should respond just like Jesus did when He went to the cross. Forgive them, Father, for they really do not know, nor do they understand what they are doing. So as this old year in the Jewish calendar ends on September 21st, the date of Charlie Kirk's funeral, and the new year, the new calendar year on the Jewish calendar begins on September 22nd, and the days of awe begin. Let God's glory, let His light, let His voice, the voice of the Lord, speak through your voice and encourage people. Do not be silent. Raise up your voices. And I think that Charlie Kirk will have his voice amplified 1,000,000 times. People are saying, I am Charlie Kirk. My voice continues what Charlie Kirk wanted to say. So, I love you. Bless you. Share this if you feel appropriate. And enjoy, because the world, I believe, is getting ready to change forever.